Howdy folks, it's Cheyenne again. So today's video is going to be about divination. I'm going to do several tools going over different divination tools. For those of you who don't know what divination is, it's basically the use of different tools to predict the future or even to look into the past, current situations, as well as divining the future. Pretty much psychics tools. So, this first video, I'm going to go over scrying a bit, and I'm going to do a little bit about dowsing, as well as talk to you about some sort of oddball methods and tools for divining and dowsing. So, first I'm going to talk to you about scrying. Scrying is basically the act of gazing into an object in order to see different pictures, different shapes, colors, patterns, and you interpret those to answer questions, predict the future, see past events. You can even use it to see current events or current situations, get a little heads up on those, get some advice and tips on how to deal with those. So, one of the most common tools used in scrying is the crystal ball. Everybody, most everybody I should say, has seen a crystal ball before, whether it's in real person, whether it was, in a movie, whether it was an episode of Scooby-Doo. Everybody has seen a crystal ball or is, very well aware of what one is and what it's used for. Here I have it is technically a crystal ball. It is a piece of black cat's eye. I personally am not a scryer. It's not my cup of tea. I'm not too much into scrying, but this crystal called out to me. I've had this for probably like 7 years now. And that is just one example of a crystal ball. Crystal balls can come in all sizes, all sorts of colors and crystal types. These are very common to find, cat's eye crystal balls. You can find a lot of different colored ones, black, blue, pink, red, green. There's even some that are multicolored, some that have, some that are like banded. My aunt has one that's like, I think, if memory serves me correct, it's white, pink, and green, I believe. But they just come in a variety of different colors. They also come in a variety of sizes. This one is kind of small. It's about the size of a golf ball. The bigger you go in sizes, the less and less money you have in your wallet. Most crystal balls that are anywhere, I've seen ones that are probably about this big. Those usually range from like $100 plus. I've seen ones that are about this big. They're like $200. They can get very expensive. Crystal balls can even be made out of just plain quartz. They can be made out of rose quartz, amethyst. I've seen ones that are made out of glass before. It varies. So that's a very common scrying tool. Another common scrying tool is just one of these, just a mirror. This is a plain mirror that you can, check out your reflection in, see how your hair looks. Mine probably looks awful right now, but, check your makeup, brush your teeth in, and they also have specialty mirrors that are specifically designed for scrying. The thing that makes these mirrors so unique is that they are black. And the reason behind that is because the black gives you sort of a blank slate when it comes to scrying. A normal, average mirror, when you look into it, you can clearly see things behind you. You can see every last little hair that's sticking out. You can see every last little wood chip behind you on the wall. It just, you can see everything. The black mirrors are designed to reflect, but they also dull out some of the images. It makes it easier for you to not focus on the images around you. And that's why so many people use those for scrying. Those can get a little bit more pricey. I usually see them for at least $25 or more whenever I come across them at stores or on websites. And there's three ways that they make scrying mirrors. It is either black glass placed over a reflective surface, just like a normal mirror is clear glass, or they are some type of polished stone, such as onyx or obsidian. And those can be very helpful to some people. Again, scrying's not my cup of tea, so I don't ever really do it. Another tool for scrying that I've seen people use before is bowls of water. As long as you have a reflective surface, you can scry. You can scry in a mud puddle, you can scry at the beach, looking into still waters, you can scry in somebody's car door if you want to. You can scry in just about every reflective surface there is. Another form of scrying that the ancient Persians used to use, and I've seen referenced in several books before, is taking a bowl of water and placing ink in it, or just having ink in there without the water at all. And basically that blackens it. It still gives you that reflection with the dull black background to be sort of a little common middle ground for you there to work with. People can also purchase scrying bowls, which are the same thing as scrying mirrors. Just a polished black bowl, usually made out of something along the lines of onyx or marble, sometimes obsidian. And you basically put water inside them, or you can just leave them without the water in them at all. You could rub them down with oil to give them a little extra shine to make the surface a little bit more reflective. And what you do when you scry is that you take the time to... Scrying usually takes some preparation ahead of time, in which the one who is scrying will meditate, or they'll kind of take the time to trance out and get into a light altered state. That kind of state that you can be in sometimes, or it's like you're almost asleep but you can still hear everything that's going on around you. Kind of getting to a place like that, and it just makes it so much easier, and it helps you to be able to see the images, the patterns, the pictures that are coming to you and are being sent to you. So when people scry, and in ancient times they would use different drugs, herbs, that would help them to see things, although a lot of times, because they were using what is technically drugs, I'm not just talking like marijuana, they would take different type of plants that have hallucinatory properties, and they would, they'd use those and they'd see things, and a lot of their predictions and stuff weren't accurate just because of the fact that, they were so outrageous because they were hallucinating it instead of actually seeing it through meditation and through what the spirit had to show them. So, with that being said, a few little oddball types of divination that I said I'd mention, I have a couple of them listed here, are, let's see, there is handwriting, which the ancient Romans used to do, and I've seen other people do it. You might have seen it in movies or read it in books or whatever, and basically it's usually called spirit writing. And what happens is that a person would, again, reach this sort of light, tranced out, altered state, and they'd have in front of them a piece of paper or parchment, whatever they were using to write on. They'd have their writing utensil, and they'd keep it poised over the page, and they'd wait until they got to that point, and they'd begin asking questions. Almost like a spirit board type deal. They'd ask, are there any spirits here? And if there was, the spirit would use their hand to write out answers, to write out messages. Sometimes people would use their non-dominant hand just to prove, to try and, make a valid argument that, hey, I'm a right-handed person, I do everything right-handed, but I'm writing out full sentences with my left hand, not skipping a beat. Obviously, it's a spirit doing it. That type of thing. So, another type of divination was the Navajo Indians would use corn kernels and make popcorn. And what they would do is that they'd ask questions and they would toss the popcorn, well, the corn kernels, into the fire, and as they popped and came out, depending on how the corn had popped, you know, the different shapes, the different lines on the popped corn, how burnt it was, how high it would jump out of the fire, different things like that, they would interpret those and determine what the answers were and what those signs meant. People have used clouds, different shaped clouds, to tell how the future is going to be. If you know, you see a lightning bolt shaped cloud, it's a bad omen. If you see a heart shaped cloud, you're going to fall in love. If you see a turtle cloud, it's a sign of wisdom. People use different things and interpret them differently. Something similar to what the Navajo Indians did was over in Asia, they would take sorry, I'm getting a little stumbled up here on my words. They would take bones, or even kind of sanded down, you know, without the bark on them, pieces of wood, and they'd either leave them blank or they could actually carve questions into the wood or the bone, and they'd throw it in a fire for a few moments, allowing it to just crack. And then they'd pull it out and they'd interpret the cracks and the burns on the piece of bone or the piece of wood, and based on those they would decide whether the question was yes, whether it was no, whether it was inconclusive, whether it was a bad omen, a good omen. They would decide based on that. The Saxons would use rods. A lot of people who watch ghost hunters or any type of paranormal shows may have seen divining rods or dowsing rods before. I don't have any with me. I do not own any. They too can get a little pricey. I'm a bit of a cheap witch. They can get a little pricey too. You know, usually around like $30 or so. And what they are, they're usually made out of brass. They're L-shaped pieces of brass. And what you do is you hold them in your hands, a few inches apart. I'm going to kind of use my fingers for a visual here. And they should be sticking straight out when you start using them. And what you do is you ask them yes and no questions. First you determine your yes and your no. You'd ask, show me yes, they might cross, that means yes. Show me no, they point outward, that means no. You're at a location, you say, is there a spirit here? They cross over, oh, that means yes, there's a spirit here. You know, are you a negative spirit? Are you a bad spirit? They stick out, that means no. That's how divining rods work. They're very similar to pendulums in that yes and no sense of questioning and the way they work. Another tool are runes. Runes, the most common runes that people use originate from Scandinavian countries, Northern European type areas, Norway, Finland, different places up that way in Europe. And they were also used in Italy as well as Germany. I do not own any runes. I'm not I'm not very big into divinatory tools myself, but I like to be well versed in everything that I use. I have one rune here that was made for me by a friend, and this is just a little wooden disc. You might not be able to see the symbol very well on it, but this is just a little wooden disc, and it has the symbol for good fortune carved into it. I don't remember the name of the symbol, I apologize, but there are somewhere like 20 plus. I think there's like 24 runes, I believe, in the system, and they can be used in a lot of different ways. They can be made out of a lot of different materials. You can find them in bone, clay, glass, marble, specific crystals like aventurine, amethyst, clear quartz. You can find them in wood. A lot of people commonly find them done in wood. Just a whole variety of how to do them. I'm not an expert on runes. I never really got into them very much. But I have a friend who is very very knowledgeable about them. Maybe I can get him to do a video sometime. Fingers crossed. And another form of divination that you could use the runes for is, there was several different ways that I can think of that I've read up on. One would be having all the runes in a bag, kind of shaking it up, asking a question, or even just inquiring about your general future. You'd shake up the bag and toss them out, and the ones that landed farther away were kind of, that's the future, and then the closer you got to yourself, they represented the present. So the ones that landed right in front of you were present circumstances, and then the farther you went, the farther the runes were away from you, the farther into the future they were getting, and what they were representing. Another method is to pull 3 of them out, and one, past, present, future type deal, as well as even just people, I've known people I've read about, just pulling them out, just pulling one out a day, and, interpreting reading up on the definition of what that rune stands for, what it represents, and that pretty much being something to dwell on for the day, something to try and live your day by. It could be something that was coming to you throughout the day. If you pulled this one out and it was a good fortune one, maybe that means you're going to get a lucky scratch off today. Maybe it means you're going to get a promotion. Different things like that. Another form of divination that you may know about but don't really come across very often is I Ching, or sometimes pronounced I Ching. It's Asian in origin. I have an I Ching coin here, and a lot of people have probably seen the coins. They're the coins with the square middle, and they're double-sided. Again, that same friend that's good with the runes, he's very knowledgeable on I Ching. Hopefully I can get him to do a video on that too. But with I Ching, they typically went along with a specific question that you were inquiring about, something specific that you wanted to know about, and it was a system of drawing lines, I believe, and you'd toss the coins, and two heads and 1 tails would mean a straight line, 3 tails would mean a line with a break in it. Different systems like that. It's a little bit complicated, a little bit time consuming, so you don't find it very often. But that was a very well practiced art back in the ancient times over in Asia. Moving along with other tools that we have here and other methods of divination, I'm going to continue a bit about dowsing. Dowsing is, from what I understand, just about the same as divination itself. It is the act of using some type of tool to determine the future, but this is more specific yes and no questions when it comes to dowsing. It is very you can't get more than just a yes, a no, or an I don't know, or a maybe. It stays right within that realm. So the next tool I have here are some pendulums, my little collection of pendulums that I have. The most common pendulum that you will find is, it's all tangled up, sorry. One of these ones. You might see these very commonly. It's just a nice pointed crystal on a chain. There's usually another crystal at the end. A pendulum, by definition, and the simplest way to put it, is a weighted object on the end of a string. So I have this one, which is very, very common pendulum. A lot of people find them very basic, very simple. Another one I have here is one that my aunt had made me, and again, it's a weighted object on the end of a string. I really like this pendulum. It's got a nice little flower on the bottom, nice little accent beads. Making your own pendulum is very, very simple. You do not need to go out and buy a $30 crystal and all the tools to do wire wrapping or anything like that. It could be as simple as having a pendant, a necklace with a pendant that has a clasp on it. So here I have one of my pentacle necklaces, and it's as easy as just undoing the clasp, allowing the pendant to slide down to the weighted end of your chain, and there you go. You have a pendulum. You can make a pendulum. You can take your wedding ring or your favorite ring. You can just put that on the bottom of a string. You can use a paper clip if you're at the office. You can use just about any object that is weighted down on the that is on the bottom of a string. My first pendulum that I used when I first began practicing as a child was actually a small pentacle pendant on the bottom of a string. I didn't really have anything too fancy back then. So, a little bit of, I'm going to show you a few things about pendulum work, a few things that you can do. With pendulums, I've seen people explain, there's different ways to hold it. People say put your arm down on a flat surface. People say stick your elbow straight out, hold it up really high. Some people will put their hand underneath it. For me, I say do whatever feels right and whatever is comfortable. I don't know about you, but if I'm going to be doing some type of, divination session, if I'm trying to contact the spirit world, I don't want to sit there for 45 minutes with my elbow hanging out like this. So I prefer to either have my elbow propped on a table or even just down by my side. So, don't mind me, my hands shake a little bit. With pendulums, I've had a lot of people tell me, oh, you're swinging it, you're faking it. It is very, very easy to tell when somebody is faking a pendulum because you can clearly see their hand moving. It's very easy to see their wrist moving, their whole upper arm moves, everything. You can clearly see. If they started off moving, naturally it's going to let itself keep moving. If they stop moving, I do not do that. I let my pendulum hang free. My hands do shake a little bit. I apologize. So if you see it moving a little bit, it's just because my hands shake. So what you're going to do with your pendulum is you're going to hold it out in front of you. Sometimes you can even find pendulum boards, or sometimes they just come as little pieces of paper, or it'll just be a square, a circle. Got that thing swinging around. It'll just be a square with a circle within it, and it looks almost like a compass. It'll just have yes, no, yes, no. Sometimes it'll have maybes written on the side, or ask again later, or I don't know. It varies. I don't use any of those. I just have my pendulum. I use that. You can use pendulums over maps. You can use them along with spirit boards. If you ever lose the pointer to your, if you have a spirit board, a Ouija board, speaking board, you could always use this. The way in which I would use it that way is to allow the pendulum to move in the direction of whatever letter it wants, the general direction, and then as you get closer, it'll circle the letter that it intends on going towards. But for right now, don't worry, I'll show that to you in a later video. For right now, I'm just going to show you the basics of how to use a pendulum. So once you pick out a pendulum that feels right for you, you're going to start by asking it to show you it's yes, a no, and me personally, I like to have an I don't know, because there are times when Spirit and the Divine do not want us to know the answer to a question. They don't think that we need to know it. It's not the right time for us to know the answer. So sometimes you need that. So what you're going to do is hold your pendulum out in front of you. You're going to wait for it to get as steady as possible. My hands shake a little bit, so mine is a little bit shaky. And you're just going to very simply ask it, show me yes. And it will begin to move in whatever direction goes along with your vibration and your energy. Everybody's pendulum moves differently. Yes, there's a chance that Jane Doe down the road might have a pendulum and hers might move the same way as mine, but I know that my mother and my sister both have pendulums, and their yeses and nos and I don't knows are extremely different than mine. My yes is clockwise. Most people let the pendulum stop on their own. I usually ask mine to stop if I'm in a rush or if I just get sick of waiting for it to slow down and stop itself. So next you'll ask, show me no. And my no is front to back. Ask it to stop. Stop. And from there, I usually go on to ask, show me, I don't know. It's usually a good thing to start every session with a pendulum out by always checking to make sure that your motions have stayed the same. So my I don't know is side to side. Stop, please. I usually like to ask it yes or no questions that I already know the answer to test it in the beginning. Ever since I was about 11 or 12 years old and I got my first pendulum, my motions have never changed. The directions it swings, they have never changed, but they can change in a same person over time. Maybe the person's energy has changed due to some type of traumatizing event. Maybe they think differently, have had different spiritual experiences. The pendulum may not always move the same for the same person. I know that my mother's has a tendency to kind of change up on her in the directions that it takes. Mine have always been the same, but instead of going through the whole yes, no deal, I usually ask it before I start a question that I already know the answer to. So I will start out simply, is my hair blonde? It's moving side to side. Clearly I am not a blonde. And that just kind of helps me to remember. Pendulums are also one of those tools that they're very easy to cleanse and they're very easy for everybody to use. I've let my little cousin, who's 7, she's used my pendulum before. You know, she finds it fascinating. It's a very fun thing to share with the kids and introduce the children to divination and psychic workings. It's a very, very fun way to show them that they're fascinated by the fact that it's moving by itself. It's moving by itself. Children love that. So I recommend that you get yourself a pendulum because I think that they're just one of those all-around general tools that they never go out of style. They're very easy to obtain. You can either make yourself one cheaply. You can even find them cheaply. This one was only $14. You know, it's very, very simple. I'm planning on getting some up on the site very soon. But I think that is the end of this segment because I don't really have too much. I don't want to bombard you with too much today. If you have any questions, feel free to post and ask them. If you want to see a specific tool at any time, again, feel free to, send an email, make a comment, make a posting about it, and we'll try to get that up. I will be doing another divination video very soon, and next I'll be going over things such as spirit boards and tarot cards and oracle cards. And with that said, I'd like to wish you all a very, very good day, and break luck.